Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to another Housing Sector podcast. I am joined by Martin Donkin, Martin, last time we were here, we were speaking about, and I will put the link in the video for those who've not seen it, Coniston House, which is where you live, which is kind of managed by East End Homes. It's in the Mile End estate. And the process was they were building, it was going to be modular flats, modular units put on top of your flats to create more homes, and it was going to be no inconvenience, and you certainly weren't going to be flooded when it rained in September 23. None of this was going to be and of course it was. And through that, you became one of the sort of reluctant housing heroes that stepped up to champion this cause. Martin, first of all, thank you very much indeed for joining today. How are you?
I'm all right. It's a lovely weekend. I've come back from a fairly nice holiday, so I'm in a good mood and haven't been thinking too heavily about housing up until now. But let's get into it.
All right. Well, look, I suppose the first question is, since we last spoke, has there been, and I did quite a cutting image, even by my standards, of a load of guys with crayons designing this thing. Has there been any improvement? Have things improved?
Well, a bunch of things have happened. So East End Homes have divested themselves of their main contractor and have taken the project in-house. And we have been hoping for some change. I mean, there have been a few changes that have been good. So, for example, a number of my neighbours, me and a number of my neighbours were not in proper temporary accommodation while this was all going on. We were in Airbnbs or hotels. I mean, the length of time this nonsense has been going on, that's just not right. So now I'm in a maisonette that East End Homes have managed to find me that I can stay until this is finished. And we're gradually moving my neighbours into, some of them are already in more permanent temporary accommodation and some are moving in as we speak. And I think the pressure for that has come thanks to the London Assembly and the Mayor of London, who got involved after I went to the People's Question Time this time last year, because obviously it is it's not obvious, but it is actually a project that is part funded by the Mayor's office. I think they put in some of the original seed funding for the programme, but which gives them some responsibility as to what's going on. But I think that's, given how much East End Homes are having to pay for all of this mess up, I think that's neither here nor there now in the kind of budgetary considerations. As for the build, they're still trying to progress with it, despite everyone's concerns about whether it meets regulations, all of this stuff. I know that the building safety regulator is still looking at this with their the private building control contractor. That's still not resolved, so there's still big question marks over the whole project, and we still don't really know when we're going to be back home. We were told last summer that we'd all be home by Christmas last year, and I mean, we all laughed when they said that, but it speaks to, I think, the way that this whole project has been managed, with them always thinking about the best case scenario and not even considering what they might have to do if things go wrong, which they inevitably will on such a complicated project.
Is it not? Are we not at the point now where, hang on a minute, we've just thrown more money, good money after bad? Can we not just remove them all, fix building so it's back to how it was, and write this off as an absolute disaster, cost disaster, but stop wasting money on it and get people back in their homes?
Well, I mean, the more people I talk to in the sector, the more people say, really at this point, because the buildings that they're building on were built in the late 1960s, early 1970s. So it's actually 3 blocks. It's not just Coniston House. There's Windermere House and Buttermere House that they've been doing the same things too. And they actually started before us, and we've discovered that they had problems with those builds, and they're still having problems with those builds, but they then decided to continue on to Coniston House without learning the lessons, or oh, hang on a minute, should we be doing this? But going back to the age of the buildings, because they were built then, their design life is, 70 years maybe? So we're looking them coming towards the end of their design life in 2040. And I mean, if they're cared for and they're looked after, yes, you could extend that for quite a while. But because of the damage caused by all of this construction work on top, that's probably going to be the limit of their design life. So even if the new units have a 70-year or 100-year design life, they're not going to have that life because the thing they're stood on top of has only got maybe 20 years of life left in it. So quite a lot of people I've talked to suggest that actually at this point, what they really ought to do is just buy everyone out, knock the whole thing down, build something modern and new that meets all the regulations. And that would just save not only all of the pain that's going on right now, but would then give you a good functional building for many decades to come after that. Whereas this is going to continue to have problems because of its age, because of the interfacing between modern regulations and old 1970s regulations on pipes and electricity and all of this stuff. So yeah, it's a thing.
I don't want to sound like a conspiracy nut here, but I'm going to. Do you think that, all these failures, let it fail, we'll knock it down, and then we'll build some nice luxury flats and we'll all make a lot of money out of it?
I no, I think conspiracy would be giving them too much credit at this stage, because it's like, I mean, to do a conspiracy, you have to be quite good at your job to keep like your operational security and information secret. And we know from all of the things that we find out that there isn't anything behind the scenes. It is just quite a mess. And it is East End Homes just going from one catastrophe to the next catastrophe, because I suspect the big problem with this whole build is that it was all built on the conceit that it would be an easy, quick turnaround and it would spend some money with the additional flats. And so East End Homes, which is a small housing provider in the grand scheme of things, has never really had the capacity to get ahead of this after it's gone wrong. So just simple things like we've got elections coming up in May, and they hadn't thought about talking to the local council to go, oh, these people are displaced, so we need to make arrangements so that they're all registered in the correct area for where they're going to be voting. Just all of these like little things that you're like, well, if you had capacity, you get ahead of that, and you'd be talking to your counterparts in the local authority to make sure this is working. But I just don't believe that they have that capacity. So certainly a conspiracy, I think, would be beyond their capability right there.
So a disaster, but not a planned disaster.
Yeah. I mean, it's... me and my neighbours, we all get really angry, and it's really hard to be angry at people who are trying but just failing. I mean, I suppose the people to be angry at are the people who kicked this all off, who didn't know what they're doing, who didn't do due diligence, and that's East End Homes and probably Gracewood as well, because Gracewood hadn't done any, which is the contractor, hadn't done anything like this. And I think if they'd got a more experienced contractor, they would have come in and looked at this and gone, this contract you've given us to do on paper looks nothing like the building that we can see in front of us, and there's a lot of problems that need addressing. And I think that's a function of the problem with this sort of build, which is kind of like we'll make it up as we go along building, which you're still allowed to do for things that aren't high risk buildings, and this isn't a high risk building because it's not high enough, although building on top of inhabited homes should be considered a high-risk building project and should go through the building safety regulator. But I mean, the reason why a lot of the building safety regulator complaints about them being slow has happened is because that's not how we're used to building in this country. We're not used to making a proper plan, looking at what you've got, looking at all of the problems that you're going to have and making preparations for those before you get to them. It's all been very much, oh, we'll see how we get along and we'll deal with any problems or compliance issues as we go through. And I mean, sometimes you hit a brick wall if you do that. And this is, I think, what's happening with our building. So it's kind of moving. There is a need to move the whole UK building sort of way of business from it'll be fine, we'll deal with it as we go along, to no, we're actually going to do a proper plan, really look at this stuff before we even put spades in the ground, look at all the compliance, look at all the things that might go wrong and mitigate them before we start the work. And also you might look at all of that and go, oh, actually, no, we've identified all of these risks. We're not going ahead with this project at all because it will be an absolute, well, there's a high chance it will be an absolute disaster, which I think they would have discovered if they had done that due diligence at the beginning.
We talk about, you've got the likes of the Child Institute Housing coming along. We're talking about culture. We're talking about this. We're talking about perception. We're talking about how you deal with customers, talking to customers. But there seems to be no exchange of knowledge when it comes to you're a northern housing provider up north. You've actually put modular buildings on top of this. How did you do it? What did you learn? There seems to be no knowledge exchange when it comes down to the sort of basic core of which is house building and managing homes.
Well, I mean, I think the problem is we're always dealing with the worst and the best. So there are really good providers out there. And I mean, I've worked with people who write the guidance for the Institute of Structural Engineers who really know what they're doing. So that knowledge does exist there. And I think it's really hard for the sector to come to terms with that isn't everybody. There are bad apples. There are people who, I mean, there's people who just, they're not deliberately trying to do something. They're just not very good. And that's the person we need to protect the public from, is somebody who doesn't know what they're doing and doesn't know that they don't know what they're doing, more importantly. And I think this comes through in all sorts of places. Like, I think we treat the registered social landlord sector very, very differently from how we would treat anything else, because in a lot of cases, they're seen by the government as the good guys because they are providing a social good for a lot of it, which is social housing. But you've got to kind of protect everybody from the worst actors in that group. So you might have very bad housing associations, or you might have units in housing associations that are really bad and are damaging people's lives. And that's where you need the protection. And we need a government that's going to say, look, we know you're all trying to do the right thing, but we are going to have to protect the people from the worst of you rather than make a sector for the best of you, because we know that doesn't always happen. And that kind of brings me onto the thing that I think I wanted to talk about today. I think you want to talk about today, which is sort of like the access to information for tenants and residents. So one of the things when I started looking into all of this absolutely nonsense situation that we had in Coniston House was what the heck was going on with the due diligence. And I used to work at a university, and I used to work in the immigration compliance department, and universities are public bodies, so they're subject to the Freedom of Information Act. So I was very well aware that, and I mean, actually, I got quite a few freedom of information requests from the public, from the press, from politicians asking for information about what we were doing with our international students and our policies on those things. And it made you operate in a particular way because you were just aware that there was the potential light of sort of scrutiny on anything you did. And I mean, I suppose I have a particular political opinion on freedom of information, and I think things should generally be open. And when I was working at the university, I know that there were decisions that we took that we stepped back from for a bit and went, you know what, we're going to take a bit more time on getting this policy together and making sure it's properly nuanced, because there is a chance that somebody is going to freedom of information request this policy, and we are going to have to stand by it. And it did make you make better decisions, because you were like, well, yeah, I could be lazy and just do something that is very broad brush, or I could actually have a think about it, and we could work together and make something that actually does look after, student immigration is very contentious because you're balancing migrant rights with the well-being of students, and those things are not always together and often in contention, and balancing that is often a politically contentious thing to do. So you have to be careful. And I sort of feel that if, when I went to look at what was going on with East End Homes, I was like, I know, I'll just bung in a load of freedom of information requests for example, the risk assessments that they would have been conducting before obtaining finance for any of this, because obviously that's a thing. And then I looked through the regulations and I found they weren't covered by the Freedom of Information Act. So despite
Yeah.
providing a public service and a very public function, they seem,
Public
well,
interest.
yeah.
It's definitely in the public interest to find out what's going on in these places and where this taxpayers' money and your money's being spent.
Absolutely. And just getting some transparency and coming up against that roadblock and going, oh, hang on, there's no way other than really putting political and media pressure on these organizations to divulge information to get stuff out of them. And then that's what we've been having to do. And that's not a good relationship, and it's not good for any of the organizations involved or ourselves. But you have to wonder why this has been allowed to be the case. I think when stock transfers happened in the 2000s, it was an error in that freedom of information should have followed that. And I think there's quite a few other examples in the public sector where things that were formerly organized by the state or local authorities were sort of spun out into other organizations and sort of have escaped from under the skirt of the Freedom of Information Act. So we've kind of lost our ability to stare into these organizations and scrutinize them properly. And it's quite interesting because Scotland has gone in, has noticed, and they have pulled all RSLs under the Freedom of Information Act in Scotland. They did it within a year. It was a one-line bill that just basically designated these organisations as public bodies for the purposes of the Act. It doesn't make them public bodies for anything else. So procurement, all of that. I get a lot of people going, oh, but if we do that, then there'll be loads of further impacts. You're like, no, there isn't. And Scotland did it, and it was fine. And the wheels haven't fallen off up there. So I was looking at that and I thought, well, we should be doing that in the rest of England and Wales. I had a look and what people had been saying in Parliament and questions that had been raised and amendments. And the current housing secretary, Matthew Pennycook, he put in an amendment to a previous bill when they were in opposition to exactly do this. And say, yes, RSLs and the rest of the UK should be subject to freedom of information. I mean, that was defeated because Labour were in opposition, they didn't have the numbers. And then, so I thought, well, now that Labour are in power with a stonking majority, they're obviously going to go full guns for freedom of information. And I was rather disappointed to find out via a request that my MP made, Apsana, that no, they're going to continue with STAIRS, which is an alternative information access scheme. And it's a weak scheme. It's not tested. We've had FOI for 2 decades.
Why reinvent the wheel that works? Yeah.
Exactly. It makes no sense to me. But apparently the Labour government are pursuing the same policy that had been constructed under the Conservative government. And I don't really understand it, but I have some suspicions as to why they're doing this. I think the suspicion is, well, while I don't think East End Homes are conniving to do something to make a lot of money, I think this is a money-making thing because I think in England we have for-profit RSLs now, and they would be brought under this. And I think this is what Labour are trying to not scare away, is these private companies who want to get into public housing and make profits out of that. I mean, I feel that Labour should be saying to those operators, like, tough tits, go and either be subject to the Freedom of Information Act or get out of the sector, because all of those organisations are doing is extracting wealth from the state, from communities. So I don't think it's a very Labour thing to be doing, but it seems to be what they've decided to do in government.
I think Labour, I don't know, they were brought in as the change. I don't think they have been that change. I think it's easy when you're the shadow government to say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And as soon as you're in power, I mean, I don't know how old you are. My dad used to watch Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. And as a kid, I didn't quite get it, but my dad would laugh and he'd go, do you know what? This is closer to the truth than you think. And it's something that keeps coming up in my YouTube reels. And I go, bloody hell, it is, isn't it? And I myself was in the House of Commons this week discussing slaps, and everyone agrees that there needs to be something done. Legislation needs to change. But the political wheels just take so long. And this thing to get it back on track and even to get it in the King's speech is looking highly unlikely. But if you're doing something in the open, there shouldn't be a problem. It's not a problem to be transparent. And as you say, if you've got that spotlight, I mean, my own landlord seemed shocked when they had to provide emails to a subject access request, because there's no way they would have written what they'd written had they thought I could later on read them myself. So I think that oversight would be good. So let's talk a little bit more about stairs. For anyone who doesn't know, what would stairs, I forget what's an acronym for now, what do they provide tenants like you and I and the people who are genuine interest in how their housing association is handling business?
I don't think we fully know yet what stairs covers, because it's still being formulated. I do know that leaseholders, so I'm a leaseholder, would not have rights under this to access information. So it is going to be very limited. It's supposedly going to allow tenants only to obtain certain information about their building and how it's being run and how charges work, maybe. It is going to be a weak scheme, though, because with freedom of information, as I said, we've had that for 2 decades. We've had 2 decades of case law with companies suing public authorities left, right and centre, and people with lots of money who've been able to put cases in there to sort of say, actually, in this case, you've got to release this data. This is what the law says. We've also got a Information Commissioner's Office that's got a lot of experience in applying that scheme. So in most cases these days, you won't have to go to court. You can apply to the Information Commissioner for a ruling. Sometimes you do still have to push them. But the problem with stairs is the people taking cases to, and the regulator for stairs is going to be the Housing Ombudsman. So you may have views on how effective they have been. Certainly in Coniston House, I pushed very heavily to try and get the Ombudsman involved, but they decided that East End Homes were acting reasonably. So I have some doubts over how effective the Ombudsman might be in running such a scheme. But then people who will be taking cases will be tenants. Tenants are not usually cash rich, and certainly are not the sort of people who will be taking cases to court to say that the Ombudsman has not correctly ruled on whether a provider has provided the information they should. Whereas with the Freedom of Information Act, because it's such a wide-ranging act, most of those arguments have already happened. You have case law available. So if you have an organisation that's not abiding by the regulations, you can take them to court with quite a reasonable degree of certainty that you're going to win, because courts are fairly hesitant to overturn precedents that they've set, especially well-reasoned ones. So, but that's just not going to exist with stairs. You're not going to get that because, as I said, people taking cases are not going to have the resources to put that through and take those cases against the Ombudsman when they don't take those cases.
They could just drag it out as well with legal costs. The social tenants' access to information requirements. Was it requirements?
Yeah. Yes.
Requirements. That's what stairs actually stands for there. He says
it's very much a word that they looked to try and fit into the scheme rather than,
how can we make that into a nice acronym?
How can we make stairs into an acronym? Yeah.
The wheels of politics move slowly. Talking of politics, you are and I'm becoming more and more a fan. Someone called me out on, oh God help us, you're not green, are you? And I said, no, I don't have any alignment to any political party. I have that freedom to be that. You are running or in running or going to be running as a Green Party member?
So I've been a member of the Green Party in town that's for quite a while, and I've been a fairly sort of like sedentary, non-active member. But because of this whole experience, I've become politically engaged just out of necessity. So in dealing with all of this, I've been talking to people on the London Assembly, politicians, MPs, all of this stuff. And I've sort of got to the point where I'm like, well, I'm doing quite a lot of political activity. And to a lesser or greater extent, somewhat successfully, and bringing people together. And also seeing how my neighbours have been royally screwed over. I sort of have been given a bit of a push to kind of actually do something about it, throw my hat in the ring and actually start politically campaigning to change some of this. Because, I mean, a lot of this stuff that's happened has happened because of systems that are not working, and they need people who care about them to get in there and just give those systems a bit of a kick. Because, as you said, about spinning out time for legal cases, a lot of what's going on with this, I'm pretty sure people are hoping that they can keep plates spinning until they get near the end and it becomes impossible for the local authority to really turn around and go, you're not allowed to do that. You're going to have to undo all of that. But just by spinning the clock out. And I think that's where we need to start pushing in society to make the systems work better. We need local authorities to make decisions quicker. We need the ombudsman to get involved and make decisions quicker. We need the social housing regulators to stick their oar in when things are going wrong earlier, because if you can fix a problem at an early stage, it's so much cheaper, it's so much less damaging for all the people involved.
Yeah.
And that's kind of pushed me into becoming political and party political and actually running and taking some responsibility for actually trying to fix the problems that we have here. So, yeah.
Well, as I was at the House of Commons taking my Irish wife through the Oliver Cromwell entrance, and luckily she resisted temptation to spit. Jeez, now we've started something. We went in, and afterwards we went for dinner. And I said, hey, I could be an MP. And she went, oh, Jesus, you just do not have the temperament for it. Well, perhaps you're right. And I certainly have a history that wouldn't take too long to dig up. I would not focus well under the intense pressure of fame or media scrutiny, that's for sure. But good luck to you. And I think with the Green Party, they're starting to become the real change, because every time Farage celebrates another Conservative member joining his party, I can't help but think, well, you're just Conservatives. You've got more Conservatives on there than anything else, so you're just the Conservatives under another name. And I don't think he'll ever get anyone to go into oh God, what is it where they the old brains let me down now. We have two parties like they did with the Lib Dems and the Conservative
Coalition.
You'll never get. Thank you. Oh dear, that's the old bro, man. I think the Green Party could get a coalition with lots of other parties. You know, bit of Lib Dems or even Labour or even Conservatives. Where I don't think Nigel Farage will be able to.
I mean, I hope not. I mean, I sort of feel that because there's degrees of coalition. There's the formal coalition that the Lib Dems went into with the Conservatives, which was absolute disaster for the Lib Dems. So I think parties are probably a bit wary of that. And I think, I suppose my best case scenario for the next national election is that we have a Labour minority government that has to be propped up by the Liberal Democrats and the Green Party, maybe. And I think that's actually quite a nice situation. I mean, one thing I remember about the coalition is it was a very stable government, because the thing when nobody has total control is that they have to negotiate everything. And that makes, well, if everyone's unhappy with the decision, it's probably a good decision. So if it's just like, yeah, we can live with that, and you're like, okay, nobody's happy, good. It's probably all right. It's not too extreme in any direction. But yeah, I don't think the Greens would go into a formal coalition with anybody at the moment. I certainly think there's quite bad blood between Labour and the Greens, especially after the last uh, uh, by-election that occurred. That was particularly horrible as a thing, and I can't sound particularly proud on our side either. But it was not a fun campaign.
Well, this isn't the political sector; it's the housing sector. And what I can say, hand on heart, is that the Lib Dems and the Green Party are the ones supporting housing issues, and they're the only ones who aren't afraid to raise it as an issue. And there is part of me that thinks that bigger political parties know that if one of these housing associations fails and go under, it will be a domino effect, and they're all just going to go under, and then we're in a right state. But there are too many people making too much money. Look, on a human note, has your relationship with East End Homes, how is that at the moment?
I mean, it's fractious. I mean, we've got a legal case going on that's for compensation and to put in some I can't think of the term, but requirements that East End Homes have to make, otherwise they'll be in contempt of court. So things like putting deadlines on the works. So I'd say probably not great. I mean, professional, at least from our end. I think from both ends, to be fair. But it is something that I worry about, because even once this is over, I think me and my neighbours are not going to trust the organisation for quite some time. And given, I mean, there was a ridiculous episode over Christmas where they changed. So a lot of us had given them keys to our home so they could empty buckets because of the water coming in. But over Christmas, they changed all of our locks, and that might be all right for possibly for tenanted properties, but leaseholders, that's definitely not right. They then claimed that they hadn't done it, although they had, because we couldn't open our doors. And then they swapped them all back and then told us they hadn't done it. And we're like, this is ridiculous. It's not going to engender trust with your tenants and residents by trying to gaslight us about something that you've done. Apparently, this is a whole health and safety thing. I had a rather hilarious visit to my home where I'd been told I had to report to the office, go and get some PPE, and then I could go and access my home and do an inspection and all of this. Turns out no PPE. I was like, well, what risks would we be trying to mitigate? No idea. Wandered around my flats and took my keys back because I was like, I'm not trusting you about this because you'll change my locks without my permission or something again. And it's just like that sort of like shenanigans is not helping build trust. And I mean, also, I don't understand why they were doing it, because they've not achieved anything through it. And it goes back to that thing that if they were trying to do some sort of shenanigans, that's a lot of work. You have to be quite competent to do that. This does not smell of competence. This smells of people making an error. And I mean, it probably was an error that they changed all of our locks, or somebody hadn't thought it through or got legal advice. And now they're trying to roll it all back, but in a very incompetent looking way. So again, that's why I don't believe that they're doing anything sneaky or out of malice or any of this, because I just don't think they've got the competence or capacity to do that. I think, yeah, that's where we are. But yeah, certainly trust is not there at the moment.
Strange, isn't it? Once they start resorting to legal action, and that comes from the legal department, who isn't focused on that human relationship, which is what housing is fundamental to housing. That human relationship.
I think it's the other way around. I think they were trying to do something human, and they hadn't got legal advice to tell them you definitely shouldn't do that because you'll be breaking the law.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Which is just even more incomprehensible. But I think it's a capacity thing. I just don't think that they have enough well-trained and experienced people running the project to kind of go, oh, there's a legal question about this because we've got leaseholders here. We need to know what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. And I think it's only when they get sort of like a snotty letter via their solicitors from our solicitor going, "Why are you doing this?" that somebody goes and actually checks and goes, "Oh crap, we can't
Who
do
did
that."
that? Rather than why did we? Who did that? And it's someone further down the line. Yeah,
Exactly. It would be somebody
site
further
manager.
down the line who's getting a kicking for
Yeah,
something that they did quite genuinely, but shouldn't have done because they've not got the support from further up.
rather than have this big bunch of assorted keys, why don't we have one master lock?
Maybe. I don't
Yeah,
know. Whatever it was.
yeah.
It's kind of
You
like,
need permission.
yeah, exactly. I mean, if they'd just written to everybody and gone, we would like to do this, we'd have probably all said yes, and
Yeah,
that's fine. But without kind of like writing to people first and bringing people along with you, that's where it all goes wrong. And it's actually going back to the whole releasing information. Of course, my neighbour. I mean, I sometimes I fall into this trap quite a lot, but whenever we have meetings with me and my neighbour, I always have to go, remember, they don't really know what they're doing. It's probably incompetence rather than something suspicious. But because we can't see into the system, because we don't have transparency, you don't know that that's the case. So, of course, your mind starts racing and going, oh, what could this be this thing? I mean, it probably isn't. So is it Hanlon's law that sort of like um, uh, never attribute to malice what can be attributed to incompetence?
I'm going to look. I don't know what it is. I'm going to look it up. Being that I couldn't find the word coalition earlier, I'm going to start looking that one up now.
I
And
mean, I think going into politics, I'm going to try and keep Hannon's law over my shoulder
yeah,
and just be like, remember, it's probably not malice. So,
probably 9%. I have the thing with my own landlord. So, when we were going through all the legal action with them, we were like, well, this was never supposed to go to court. They're well out of their league here. They have no idea what they're doing. And now they're trying to fight fires and that whole thing around suddenly getting subject access requests from me and going, well, you wrote this down. You wrote this to this company. And they're going, oh my God. So I think it is incompetence, but now they have to keep doubling down on it because I keep calling them out for being morons. No, we've got to double down on this now. Keep going. And it's just never ending. Although we're
well, I
hoping
mean,
that we're changing,
but I mean, this comes back to professionalism because in a professional environment, a properly professional environment, you screw up, you just admit it and you
yeah,
come clean about it, and
yeah,
that's more powerful. And yes,
exactly.
there might be a consequence for it, but you just have to suck that up. But the thing is, if you do that early on, if you go at the initial stage that you've screwed something up, then you can just kind of go, oh, okay, that's a small compensation maybe need to be paid out. But if you then just double down and double down and double down, that's the point where you can get an entire organization that's going to collapse.
This is what, and I
From
worked for a major telecommunications company. I was running their complaints department. And yeah, right, this complaint's come in. First thing we're going to do is talk to the customer. We're not apologizing yet. We're investigating. We're going to investigate, find out what went wrong, and we're going to go back with them as how we've updated, what we've learned, how this won't happen again, and then offer them some sort of apology and compensation. So, you restore confidence. And that's what they all say when they get pulled across the coals by the housing ombudsman. They go, we've learned from that. But as you and I could testify, they haven't and they don't. They're
well,
fighting fires, which is a bad use of term.
I mean, there is a problem in that we've got like this. You've got your housing associations, and they might be learning from it, so that might be fine. But when you've got developers and contractors and all of these other organisations involved, and I think with the disaster on our estate, I think that's probably more from the contractors who are not direct employees of Eastern Homes. And we've got a new head of Eastern Homes, and I like to hope that he is trying to foster a good working environment for all of his employees with that professionalism. But that's unfortunately not the whole structure that we're dealing with. There are all of the other contractors, and there are all of the. But with a big building project, there are dozens of these organisations, and they're all trying to cover their backs because they don't. I mean, especially with something that's gone as wrong as this, they don't want to be holding that baby when the whole thing falls to pieces. So yeah, and you can see why they will be doubling down on errors that shouldn't have been made.
One final question, Martin, because I don't know, if East End Homes came to you tomorrow and said, look, we've sorted it all out, it's all fixed, you're all ready to go back home end of the month, would you?
Well, I mean, I would move back, at least temporarily, but I might be looking to move somewhere else, and sell up. So,
do you think you'd be able to sell it now?
Well, I mean, if they've done what they have to do, yes. If they don't, then yeah, I mean, it is a worry that there are going to be ongoing problems that are going to make these homes unsellable. They claim that they're going to fix it all, and that kind of brings me to something else that we've been asking for quite a long time now, in that there are quite a few leaseholders who just want to get on with their lives and would much rather be bought out. That would seem to be, if East End Homes are confident that they are going to finish this project and it's not going to be an ongoing disaster, that would seem to be a safe investment for them, because they would purchase the leases back and then they would have the value of that home, which they could then sell again or turn into social housing or whatever. So financially, that should be effectively cost neutral to them.
If they have the cash flow for it.
Well, this is the thing. They claim they don't, and that is worrying as to whether the organisation is an ongoing concern. Having said that, they did find last year £1.4 million to buy out the contractor and to get out of that contract. So they do have money, and if you look at their sort of Charity Commission and Companies House returns, there is some money available to them, and they also own a lot of property that they could leverage if necessary. So it's more, I think, a lack of will to buy people out than than being incapable of doing that. And I think this reflects on, when it's something they want, they make it happen. So getting out of their contract, yes, they managed to find the money for that. But when it's something that we want or would benefit or make the lives easier of the residents affected by this, it's really hard to push them to do stuff for that, which I think, and I think that's probably quite common amongst the sector in the...
Yeah. What a note of gloom to leave.
That's a horribly gloomy note. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, Martin.
But I mean, the positive note is, but that's the sort of political pressure that me and hopefully a lot of other Greens will be putting on organisations to say, actually, you need to stop working for yourselves so much as working for the people who you should be looking after.
Yeah, so refocus on your social mission that you all claimed and hold on to for dear life. Martin, good luck with the party. Let us know how you, and obviously it's been great to have you back at some point. And good luck with your political endeavours. Remember the housing sector when you do.
Well, I mean, I think it's my raison d'etre. So it's at the moment, so absolutely will be.
Take care, stay strong. Thank you very much indeed. God bless. Thank you everyone for listening. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Apparently it helps. Thank you everyone.
And hit that bell.